Should female athletes train differently across the menstrual cycle? In this video, we are looking at the article, The Effects of the Menstrual Cycle on Physical and Psychological Parameters in Female Athletes. It was published in Scientific Reports, by Niering and colleagues. The study examined how different menstrual cycle phases may influence strength, mood, fatigue, vigor, sleep, motivation, and perceived exertion in female athletes. The key question is not simply, does the cycle matter? The better question is, how does it matter, for which athlete, and for which performance marker? Because the menstrual cycle may shape performance, but individual patterns matter most. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to Sports Science Insight. Here we break down sports science research into simple, practical, and evidence-based insights for athletes, coaches, students and practitioners. Let's break it down. The menstrual cycle is not just a calendar. It is a biological rhythm. Across the cycle, estrogen and progesterone fluctuate. These hormonal changes may influence neuromuscular function, energy regulation, thermoregulation, recovery, and psychological well-being. During the early follicular phase, estrogen and progesterone are generally low. Estrogen rises toward ovulation, then progesterone becomes more dominant during the luteal phase. These changes do not automatically determine performance, but they may influence readiness. That is why cycle-sensitive training has become a growing topic in sports science. Performance is not only training load. Biology also changes across time. One strength of this study is that it did not reduce the menstrual cycle to only 2 phases. Many studies compare only follicular versus luteal phases, but this study used 6 phases: early follicular, late follicular, ovulation, early luteal, mid-luteal, and late luteal. The researchers used urinary LH testing to help identify the ovulatory window. That is important because purely calendar-based methods can misclassify cycle phases. By looking at 6 phases, the study could capture more specific patterns. And that matters because performance and mood may not change in a simple straight line. The key idea is this: this study looked beyond a simple follicular versus luteal comparison. The study included 18 eumenorrheic female athletes, between 18 and 30 years old. They did not use hormonal contraception. Each athlete completed 6 testing sessions across her own menstrual cycle. That created a total of 108 measurements. The athletes came from different sports. This makes the sample more realistic, but also adds variability. The researchers measured physical performance and psychological markers at each phase. The design was repeated measures. That means each athlete was compared with herself across the cycle. This is useful because menstrual cycle responses are highly individual. So the study was not only asking whether athletes differ from each other, it was also asking how each athlete changes across her own cycle. The researchers measured both performance and well-being. On the physical side, they tested dynamic maximal strength using the half squat. They also tested isometric handgrip strength. These 2 tests are different. The half squat is a dynamic lower body strength task. Handgrip is a more isolated isometric strength task. On the psychological side, they used the profile of mood states, or POMS. They looked at vigor, fatigue, depression, and anger. They also measured motivation, subjective sleep quality, and perceived exertion. This is important because athlete readiness is not only physical. An athlete may have strength changes, but she may also have changes in fatigue, mood, and well-being. So the study measured both performance and well-being. That gives a more complete picture. The first major result was about dynamic strength. Half squat performance changed significantly across the cycle. The highest values appeared during the late follicular phase and around ovulation. The lowest values appeared during the late luteal phase. This suggests that dynamic lower body strength may be more favorable in the phase before ovulation and around ovulation. One possible explanation involves estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen may have excitatory effects on the nervous system. Progesterone may have more inhibitory effects. These hormonal patterns may influence neuromuscular activation. But we need to be careful. The article reports a very large effect size for the half squat. The authors themselves recommend caution when interpreting that magnitude, because repeated measures designs can inflate effect sizes when within subject variability is low. So the message is not, every female athlete will peak before ovulation. The message is, dynamic strength showed a clear cycle-related pattern in this group. The second strength result is important. Hand grip strength also changed across the cycle, but it did not follow the same pattern as the half squat. Half squat performance was highest in the late follicular phase and around ovulation, and lowest in the late luteal phase. But hand grip strength reached its highest values in the late luteal phase. This tells us something very important. Not all strength tests behave the same. Cycle effects may depend on the type of performance task. A dynamic multi-joint lower body test may respond differently from an isometric handgrip test. This is why coaches should avoid using one general rule for all performance markers. The practical message is, task type matters. Cycle effects may depend on what you are testing. The psychological results showed a strong late cycle signal. In the late luteal phase, fatigue increased, depression scores increased, and vigor decreased. Vigor represents energy, readiness, and positive mood. So when vigor drops and fatigue rises, that can be relevant for training decisions. This does not mean that every athlete should reduce training automatically in the late luteal phase. But it does mean this phase may create a greater well-being challenge for some athletes. The study also found that depression scores were lower around ovulation and early luteal phase compared with the late luteal phase. So the late luteal phase stood out as the more difficult psychological window in this group. The key message is, the late luteal phase showed the strongest well-being challenge. Not every marker changed across the cycle. Motivation did not show a significant phase effect. Subjective sleep quality did not show a significant phase effect. And perceived exertion also stayed relatively stable. This is important because it prevents overgeneralization. The menstrual cycle did not affect every variable in the same way. Some markers were sensitive, others were not. Strength changed, mood changed, but motivation, sleep quality, and perceived exertion were more stable in this study. That means coaches should not assume that every athlete will feel, sleep, or perform differently at every phase. Instead, they should track which markers actually change for each athlete. The cycle did not affect every marker equally. So what should coaches and athletes take from this study? First, the menstrual cycle can be relevant for strength and well-being. Second, effects may depend on the performance task. Half squat and handgrip did not follow the same pattern. Third, the late luteal phase may be a more challenging period for fatigue, vigor, and mood in some athletes. Fourth, motivation, sleep quality, and perceived exertion may not always change across phases. Fifth, individual patterns matter more than rigid phase rules. This is the practical takeaway. Cycle-sensitive training should be individualized. Track strength, track fatigue, track mood, track readiness, then adjust but do not assume. The goal is not to limit female athletes based on cycle phase. The goal is to understand the athlete's own data and make smarter training decisions. If this video helped you, leave a like, subscribe to Sports Science Insight, and stay tuned for more evidence-based content on training, recovery, performance, and athlete health. And tell me in the comments, should coaches adjust training based on menstrual cycle data, or only based on daily readiness? See you in the next breakdown.